So I was kind of concurrently partying, doing yoga, and went with the meds all together. It's a concoction even with one single day.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I have a gig to do that night. I was able to be in the pain, the physical pain, which eventually led to the resilience of understanding how do I deal with the emotional pain. That led me to this realization, oh yeah, anything can happen to me anytime. If something's going to happen to me tomorrow, how are my family members going to do my stuff? I think one really big lesson is no matter what people think of you, it's not my problem, it's not my business. It's really more on who they are and what they think, rather than me for being who I am in my own true way that I express myself.
All right, we're back for another installment of Mind Over Chatter. This is a space where we can explore how to build inner resilience in a world full of noise. In other words, each episode represents a deep dive into the healing modalities, the practices, the habits that individuals like you and me have used in their day-to-day to be able to cultivate some form of stillness or to create space to help dial down the volume in our constantly stimulated brains with the ultimate objective of living a more purpose-filled life. So I really have the privilege of sharing this space with some wonderful souls who have the graciousness to share their stories of overcoming the odds, overcoming adversity, and making some really difficult but necessary and ultimately rewarding transitions in their life. And that brings me to today's guest, who has been so kind as to spare some of her precious time to join the podcast. Her name is Amanda Ling. She has a pretty colorful CV. DJ, musician, educator, yoga teacher, sound healer, decluttering consultant. In her words, a multidisciplinary healing arts practitioner who creates transformative experiences that foster clarity, calm, and empowerment by weaving music, spirituality, science, and personal development into accessible practices for modern living. So I'm going to thank you on two counts. One is for coming on the show and sparing the time. Another is for making me feel like a huge underachiever.
Oh, come on. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today and just sharing my story and sharing all the good stuff.
Yeah, you've had a pretty interesting life. I don't think there are many human beings that can say they've been a part of a rock band with an international fan base, but you do fall into that category. Most people know you for being a part of Electrico, which was a band formed in 1996, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, technically, yes.
Technically, yes, but you joined in
I joined
2004.
in 2004.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of lived and breathed that for a sizable chunk of your early career. You were a keyboardist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's correct. But before we get into your life as a band member, I'm curious to know how you even tread this path in the first place. Did you have musical influences growing up? How did you end up choosing to become a keyboardist?
Music has been a really big part of my life since I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
Classically trained pianist. And later on in secondary school, I was joining the percussion band in the symphonic band in my school. So I've just been really exposed to music, and I love music, all sorts of genres, from metal to rock to classical to even a bit more of the meditative music, which I would probably get into in a bit.
Yeah.
So I think it was a very natural thing. As I was in secondary school, I was very clear I wanted to study music. I was very, very clear. And back in the day, it was just Windows 95. I was always just going online and actually also checking on different music universities I could aspire to get into.
Yeah.
And I would always order the prospectus from these different universities from abroad. And then eventually I kind of just landed with LaSalle in Singapore, just like a starting base. So I knew that after O's, I'm just going to dive right into LaSalle and the music course and see how that goes for me at that point. So so that's kind of how I started the musical journey. And at the same time, in my student years in LaSalle, that was also when I got really influenced and being brought into the music industry in Singapore through one of my drum teachers, who was really a very pivotal figure in the drum scene at the time, Ray Aziz, shout out to you. He was my teacher when I was 14. I was just really interested in learning the rock drums. And eventually, while I was studying, he was like, do you want to like join my band as a keyboardist? And I know you have like piano background and stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, let's just try it out. You're young, you're like, 17, 18, and hungry for experiences. And I'm like, wow, that's a privilege. So that was actually my very first foray, even prior to Electrico, in dipping my toes in the industry.
Yeah.
And then, one thing just led to another, and that's how it goes.
What kind of music did you listen to? Like Metallica, Nirvana, AC/DC, that kind of stuff? Or
yeah,
not really?
Like your everything else in your 90s, Foo Fighters, Nirvana, I love my grunge rock, and like Smashing Pumpkins. And and in those days, I have this really interesting, very, like, I would say, library of what I'm listening to. So one day I could be listening to the heavy rock.
Yeah.
The other day I'll be like Spice Girls, maybe. And another time I would be like a little bit more of, I always used to consider this a secret compartment of listening to what you would probably consider new age music, right? Like meditative music, very world music, very ethereal kind of style. It really drew me into that kind of world because it's a little bit different from the usual pop rock, metal. And at the same time, I was also loving soundtracks. Like any OST soundtrack from, I don't know, Lion King or any of it. There's always two albums, if you realize, back in the day. There's always the main album where you have your popular songs that would be used from other artists, and there would be the film scoring original music motion soundtrack. I would be buying the original motion version of it, the instrumental version that basically underscores the cinematic elements to it. And I think that was how I also kind of drew my love into instrumental music in itself.
So you never really had like any desire to be a singer or anything like that?
No.
Right.
It was really more of what's going on in my head and out through my hands, more than my voice. So that just seemed more natural for me.
So how did you end up joining your first band? Before Electrico, you were part of...
Throb.
Throb, right.
Yeah.
So how did that sort of transpire?
Basically, I was... back in 2003, there was this now really renowned yearly music festival called Bay Beats in Esplanade. So they started in 2002.
Yeah.
But I started playing in 2003. That was my first time with Throb, and one of the first few gigs as well over there. During soundcheck, apparently, I didn't know, but I was soundchecking with Throb, and Electrico guys were also meant to be playing on the same stage, and were meant to soundcheck after us. And then, they kind of sort of knew my reputation from, others during the scene at the time, and they're like, oh, we do need a female keyboardist, and like, let's try to see if we can poach her, right? And but that was just a thought, apparently. A couple of months down the road, I was we were kind of like in the same space attending a gig, and when I was having a supper later on, one of the band members actually came over to me and say, hey, we're looking for a female keyboardist, and we have like a New Year's countdown show at Esplanade. Would you like to join? Just join us and just see how it goes first. So of course, again, as being young and hungry for experience, and I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And I think through that, it was fun, learning their songs. At the same time, we had to play a lot of like covers, Coldplay, Foo Fighters, even up to like Dancing in the Moonlight, the kind of like fun when the fireworks go boom, and that was like the theme going on. So there were interesting times, learning the songs and gigging and playing, and that was like a one-off. I was still in my last semester of my in music college.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were kind of looking into getting me more full-time as I graduated. So but I told them that don't disturb me until like mid-year. So once I graduated, and then they kind of like tried to convince me to join. And I suppose, and they were
the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. And they were working on that album that was going to be launched, that was under Universal Music, and everything goes after that.
Yeah, it's quite a story. I'm just curious to hear from you about what life as a band member was like back then.
I was really just jumping into the unknown.
Yeah.
Really, because I never really thought I would be in a rock band per se, considering at that point I was kind of heavily, party girl, clubbing, and at the same time I was also learning DJing, and I was very influenced from the DJ electronica scene.
So you were spinning at clubs as well?
Later on.
Oh, okay.
Not at
Not
that
initially.
point, but yeah, probably 2008 onwards.
Yeah.
But I did learn a couple of DJ lessons, back in 2003. I didn't really expect it, how everything turned out to be honest, because I was in music college. My original plan was, okay, I'll just take a leap year. And I did have a plan to attend a music college in UK, Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. That was kind of where I was kind of thinking. But being a very open book or open to experiences, I just kind of let the experience take me into whatever journey that presents itself, instead of having a fixed plan. There's always good and bad with the ebb and flow of going with the flow, or having a bit of a structure and allowing that flexibility to come through.
Yeah.
I was a bit too much of go with the flow.
Aren't we all at some point?
Yeah. It's only much later, when I grew up a little bit older, that I understood and appreciate structure in my life.
Yeah. So when you say a bit too much of going with the flow, like, what do you mean exactly?
Sometimes I may not know what I want.
Yeah.
And it's based on the situation, and I placate into something that may not be my plan, but it's just, I'm just being swayed into people's opinions or suggestions without checking in myself. And that is where a very big lesson that has been learned in my whole entire journey. Is it really what I want, or is it what they want, right? And I was always struggling with that. And even if it was something that was bounced back to me, what am I wanting?
Yeah.
It came to a point of, but I don't want to disappoint people. So there are a lot of more things to unpack from that in that whole entire journey, that I realized that I was a people pleaser. Because 1 year into going with them, I was still on my mind wanting to go overseas for my studies. But then the thought of, if I go, what's going to happen to the band? Because we're kind of in the peak. And that was actually a really deep, crazy struggle I was dealing with, internalizing it. And then in the end, I stayed, right?
So kind of like their happiness was your happiness, in a way.
Sort of, without kind of making sure what is okay for me and what is maybe not so healthy for me, or where do I actually, from what ground am I going to base my decisions from? Yeah, I was clueless. I was just just going in blindness, trying to figure things out. But then I thought that by doing that, then, it's just going to, make everything okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you being introverted and then being thrust into the spotlight and having all this fame, did that kind of interfere in your process of being you?
Welcome to the story of my life. Yes. I think for me, when my love for music has always been from I love to just play, I love to perform, I love to compose, but I never really thought about, I want to be famous, I want to be in front of how many crowds, In fact, my vision of it as a child or as a young teenager was maybe more of a behind the scenes in a studio, composing, producer kind of element. And even my O-levels essay was about how am I going to create my music production studio and business. It was a very interesting narrative piece that I did. So that was a way that I thought it would be, but it didn't turn out to be. So with the introverted elements being thrust into the spotlight, that created so much insecurities and anxieties and fear about, oh my gosh, how am I going to navigate this? And, those days, it's not so much like today where people get a lot of resources online or support systems in helping you through a certain, or even grooming into a certain way of being in the industry. I mean, there were formats and places and, entities that would groom you for that, but it's just for that very well packaged pop stardom version of things. But going into this and the amount of publicity and all of that that happened, I wasn't clued into what was the consequence of that.
Right. And so then you coped with that by partying and drinking
Yes.
and going out.
Yeah, not knowing the right strategies and no proper guidance in that sense. You just bounce off all corners to find what was my comfort zone. And unfortunately, my comfort zone was in like the vices at the time.
Yeah.
That later on obviously did not do me good in many ways. It affected a lot of my own productivity, performance, relationships. Everything was just like down spiral for a period of time. Yeah.
So like, how did you kind of emerge from that like period of like darkness, I suppose?
I would say, I think I hit I wouldn't say plateau. I think I hit a wall rather. And in 2007, the irony is that I started getting help. Started getting help with psychiatric help, with a bit of counseling, with a bit of medications, prescribed medications. And it's actually around the same time that I also started my yoga journey. So I started taking yoga classes. So I was kind of concurrently partying, doing yoga, and went with the meds all together.
That's a wild concoction.
Yeah, it's a concoction even with one single day.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I have a gig to do that night, or things
Wow.
like that. And the amount of expectations that you need, to be able to do what you need at that time. So that became a thing for a while that I would, after yoga class, step off class, light a cigarette up. And then on like 2 hours later, I'm just getting drunk again. So it was very inconsequential, but I knew that something in me was just pushing me to just do something different, like totally out of this whole like toxic lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, the more, as it is, the more you practice, the better you get with things. And I get to really be inspired by the whole practice of, being able to feel really strong and empowered within your body through the different like yoga postures, the different breathwork practices. There was a turning point where I realized that I really was loving the practice of yoga and how it made me feel. Like, when you're having anxiety, you're everywhere. Your thoughts you're not in your body. So yoga was helping me to embody that and pull myself back into the body and feel the spaces around, and having that ability to create that awareness. Because I have the awareness of the physical sensations of that, or the pain of a squat or things like that, I was able to be in the pain, the physical pain, which eventually led to the resilience of understanding how do I deal with the emotional pain.
Yeah.
It usually enters from a very physical format. When my mindset was like, I want to get serious in the practice, and I realized that the cigarettes were directly impacting my pranayama breathwork practice. So then I realized that, okay, this has to go.
So you just ditched it overnight?
No. I actually, prior to that, tried maybe quitting cold turkey in 2008. There was this book, and at that point, there was a couple of workshops going around about Ellen Carr's book on how to stop smoking. So I read it. I had some friends that were bringing the facilitators down, but I didn't attend the workshop at that point. However, I tried the cold turkey method, but within 2 months, it backfired, and I went on a bender. Ta-da!
Yeah.
When I realized that, again, I wasn't really doing something that I was ready for, even though I kind of knew it. Like, I know I need to do this, so hence I logically and physically tried to do it. But in my heart, I just felt some insecurities there to know that the first thing that hit me was, oh my God, how about my morning coffee? I don't have any accompaniment with it. Oh no, what am I going to do after my meals?
Cravings,
oh no,
yeah.
like, oh no, like what if I drink alcohol and I don't have it? I will look stupid without my cigarette. That's still so... I'm so used to it, right? You're so conditioned and do it, and suddenly you're just freehand, and you wouldn't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah. That's what it is. They're all coping mechanisms, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was that point where I felt like, okay, when it went to the bender, I'm like, okay, I knew that wasn't the time for me, so I didn't want to force it too. And I suppose I let my own practice lead me to it, rather than being harsh on myself and saying, no, you got to stop it now. You know? So I'm like, okay, just leave it be. So within 2 years, in 2010, I think that's where everything shifted for the better, pretty drastically.
Yeah.
Because that was the time that I made the decision to, okay, I need like literal physical help, medical help in that. So I went to my GP and told him, okay, look, I'm having this issue. I tried, cold turkey, and I was prescribed at that time, reluctantly taking this thing called Zyban, which is a anti-smoking. Basically, it helps people to wean out cigarettes.
It's a pill, or?
Yes, it's a pill.
Okay.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, it's also actually categorized as an antidepressant. And I was still on some of my other prescribed medications on anxiety and stuff. But so it was really kind of another kind of concoction going on for at least 2 months.
Was your GP aware of the other meds you were taking?
Yes, he was.
Oh, okay.
He was.
And still felt it was safe to prescribe you?
In a way, yes. In a way. As long as I'm able to kind of time it apart and things like that. So that pill was very effective. However, there was always these little side effects going on, which was, just terrible. It was like two months of just physical, nauseating feeling. And, because the whole point is that you're supposed to feel the cigarette like you're just not enjoying the cigarette. It deactivates that, what I call the shock factor in the brain. That's like, the dopamine effect.
Yeah.
So it cuts that off. So it tastes like cardboard. So I remember I had a really good friend with me, and with my last cigarette at that time, and okay, let's do this. Okay, my last one. The whole point is that by the time I light it, I don't even want it. I had 1 or maybe 2 puffs, and I was like dry retching, which means that this
worked.
is done. It done, yeah. But it took me another 2 to 3 weeks to kind of clean that other side effect of the chemicals within the pill itself. So during that season, I actually then also decided to stop my other prescribed medications. But I tried to do it in a way that I went to different more natural healing methods, and whether TCM physicians or a nutritional GP that sees things from a holistic practitioner point of view. And she does still prescribe, things when I need to, antibiotics and stuff, but it's more to help me understand what might be the imbalances I'm having in the, say, the minerals compositions, right? So through a blood test, you're able to really pinpoint down, certain things are this way because of this deficiency of something, right? Like zinc deficiency or too much copper can lead to anxieties. And for people with thyroid issues, it might be a higher element in that. So I was schooled and educated in a whole entire thing about minerals and in a way how our body absorbs different things and what it works, what doesn't work, and how it would impact your emotions and your thoughts in this way of imbalances in all of these things. So, and on top of that, I explored the Chinese traditional way, and then of course in a more mental, emotional, energy element, I've also explored a bit more esoteric practices like Reiki, and other energy healing. So I think that became a journey of exploration on top of my yoga practice to be able to, safely just wean those toxic stuff out, because therein lies, it's a very natural progress when you just shift the environment and you shift the choice point of what you consume. Naturally, I wouldn't want to be in an environment that would promote alcohol or be in an environment that would tempt you into it. If you know you'll be tempted in a way, then how are you going to deal with that? And I was generally put in an environment that I was constantly tempted, because I was still DJing in a bar at that time, and alcohol, it's, you can get free flow.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting journey I had, and in a way that even as I was DJing in there, I started just drinking hot water with lemon, and then guests,
Wow.
like some patrons might want to buy a drink, and like I'm sorry, I'm not drinking, but I can cheers you with my water. Then obviously it became this thing, and they're like, are you sure you don't drink? And then I'm like, yeah. I'm just keeping clean and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just about enforcing it and reinforcing it, even
Yeah.
in an environment that is so tempting.
Because you are who you associate with, right? As the
Exactly.
famous saying goes.
Exactly.
Did your friends at the time, your drinking buddies, find it difficult to like relate to you because of the changes that you had enforced?
I think in general, yes. I would say when you are part of a environment or a community or with a similar lifestyle, and you kind of chose to shift out of it,
Yeah.
it's a very natural thing that they would probably understand, but then it became a very natural drop-off point where you just slow fade away.
So those friendships were actually phased out.
Yeah, like
Right.
when I stopped clubbing, then I realized that actually those acquaintances or friends that I thought it's just because of the lifestyle. If not for the lifestyle or the association of it or anything at all, we wouldn't have anything much in common, sort of. And I realized that as I get into more of my own journey, I think because it's so unique, everyone's healing journey is so unique that it actually can be a lonely process, but much needed. It came to a point where I just have to cut off a lot of, I have to declutter, literally, like
Yeah.
environments, people, places and things like that. And even my lifestyle, to a certain point, even cut out, let's say, DJing for bars, because that's not a place eventually
Yep.
that I want to continue to be like immersing myself in.
Yeah. So this whole idea of decluttering as a means to heal yourself, what was the sort of genesis of that? Was it something to do with like the physical space that was being occupied in your house, or what?
It's always came from the obvious physical stuff. Back in 2014, I moved out of my parents' house into so it's the first time with my own apartment. And obviously, it's a bit of a different frame of mind to think about, I have all these things in my one room, in my parents' home, and now I have a whole place. How am I going to sort this thing and organize stuff? So it came from a noob, kind of like clueless point of not knowing how to strategically place things and organize stuff. So that's where I read the KonMari method of tidying in 2014, 2015. And applied that. And I realized that while that was a process for me, I was also sharing it with like some good friends then. And then they were also kind of inspired to kind of like try it on for themselves. And for my case though, one of the biggest takeaway, at least for that particular technique, it helped me form structure. It helped me form like this is step by step. Even though it might seem rigid, but for someone that have spent her whole life doing free flow things, I actually was at that point of time in my life appreciated like a bit of a structure.
I was just about to say that musicians tend to have like a free-flowing mindset in the way that they create their music, whereas a declutterer, is that a word? Is much more organized and like regimented. Yeah. So it kind of feels like an oxymoron of sorts.
It's the same question as, if a talented musician that is classically trained, formally trained versus one that is self-taught.
Yeah.
Like, how do you define the brilliance and greatness of them? I think it's a bit of both. It's a balance of both.
Yeah.
Being able to be free flow, enable a lot of flexibility and creative thing about exploring anything in the world. But sometimes it can be a crux point of stuckness, because it's like if you give a blank canvas, it's like, oh, what do I do with it? Unless you have a fixed theme, there must be at least a theme or an idea to then start generating ideas from. But I realize, at least for me, it works better when I have both. Being like formally trained musically, knowing a certain how certain like structures are formed, or like chords and progressions and whatnot, but yet not over being rigid with that, and at the same time just allowing like whatever comes just flow.
Yeah.
Then you just kind of marry both together. So I think when it came to a point of decluttering, it was very much like, okay, this, and going through the motions of that protocol. But I think that was what was needed for me in my life, and I think in a very broad stroke of it, because of how I manage life in general. That was a very good application to now I applied it physically. The biggest surprise I had was I was able to make decisions in other parts of my life more effectively and faster. Because I tend to be a bit indecisive or like too many options. And then I'm like, oh no, like, you know, what am I going to do with all these options? So these processes are able to empower me to be able to just work from that framework and make decisions from that. And because every time you follow the method and have the opportunity to decide, like, you know, 100 items that you need to think about to keep, throw, donate, maybe, there's 100 times of utilizing the decision, the tiding muscle, I call it, the muscle of making the decisions, the better you get. So when that happens, when another non-related physical decision needs to be made, like I have 3 opportunities in front of me right now, so which is the best option? Then I'll be able to have a thought process that's really structured to just help me make a decision within like the next couple of minutes.
So this whole KonMari method is premised upon deciding what to keep and what to do away with by determining what sparks joy and what doesn't, right? So in this structured thought process that you have generated through like studying the method, learning the method, applying the method, how do you determine like what sparks joy between, let's say, 3 items?
Yeah.
And you want to keep one of them and discard 2, you know? This is for my own practical, I mean, applies to me as well because I struggle to sort of
I think
clean my room and stuff like that.
I hear you. Spark joy, the word spark joy can be really vague in general because people like, I don't really resonate with that word. But I think it's really a very innate feeling of like, yes, like, yeah, I want that. You know, like this, it still kind of give you that little like inkling of magnetism towards it. But not all items might be relatable that way. So it's more of then the, say, more functional items, that it's more the utility items, for example. It can be approached from a more like, okay, is this going to be functional or not? Or am I going to use this in any of my daily functional tasks? So it becomes more of a, is it going to help me in my effectiveness of my whatever task, whatever that item is related to. But if let's say you have this 10 of the same things, then obviously I would say you have to draw in another process in, non-KonMari related, but more of a downsizing minimalist approach of like, do I need so many 10? You know, like maybe just limit to 3 to 4 if you have 10 things, and the best ones, the best function one, you know. So it really depends on what the function of it. But say if it's just a decorative item, then from the KonMari perspective, if you have everything that sparks joy and you are kind of unwilling to let it go, then the question would be, do I have the home and the space to house them that would honor them, rather than I'm just going to keep it in a cupboard. If that's one of the case, then fine. But do you have space that is not going to be considered clutter eventually? And I think it's a very ongoing process, because I have had many years of having that few things, and I always go through this review every 6 to 12 months on my own, for myself. Like, am I ready to let it go? Am I ready to let it go? What's the story? What is the thing that why I'm not ready to let it go? Is it a sentimental value or, you know? So once there will be a time in your life that it would come to that pressing moment of decision making.
Yeah.
But being able to use that methods and what spark joy or not, or what's functional or not, in the easier items, you know, in the more maybe consumable stuff, then you can build something up to be more certain when the day comes you need to make decisions on the more personal items that have sentimental value.
So to that point, I suppose, let's say you're in a situation where you're dealing with an item that has no functionality. It might be a gift that was presented to you by an ex who's no longer in your life, but there's still a lot of nostalgia attached to it, right? So what's the thinking process then?
I mean, to your example, then it has to then fit into your values. Then a lot of it is also more on value driven. Like, okay, nostalgia, but is this whether the relationship, was it like did it end on a happy note or not? I mean, there are a few guiding questions based on the situation as well. But it's a bit more of like that line of questioning that, okay, all right, it's nostalgia, but is it what is the value of you holding that? And what is the cost of you, not letting that go? Right? Is it you're stuck on a memory, right? Or are you trying to attract or bring new opportunities of relationships in? But if I am having that attachment there of a nostalgia of a previous thing,
you're not creating space to be able to do what you've just described,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
But I mean, it's fair enough to certain things that are beautiful or anything, but if you are able to discern that that's not going to affect my next relationship, that's fine. But more often than not, people may not be aware of the unconscious impact it can have on, if you talk about energy, right? It's a certain old energy that you may need to be released so that new opportunities might come in a lot better for you. The better choices might come too.
Just to follow up on that, do you think that decluttering on the whole, objectively speaking, has helped you unpack and process old traumas?
Yes, very much so. Because from a very physical process, well, actually, the physical process becomes a very emotional process when faced with the items that would trigger traumas. So you, in a way, kind of being directly confronted with certain elements about certain aspects of your life or whatnot. I mean, not in that way that you would be healing that by decluttering, but it just brought awareness, because there are many things that we keep in our cupboards, in our storage, and, piled under this and that, and you're not aware, you don't take stock of what actually you have in totality, in the entirety of this is me, and this is like my 10 million things I have around me in my house, in my room. But decluttering gives that opportunity of taking stock exactly how many notebooks I have, how many this I have, this. And it brings up things that you knowingly, unknowingly sweep up under the carpet.
So like the insecurity you referred to in the early stage of your career, did decluttering kind of help you at least understand that on a higher level?
To some extent, yes. Because the things that, like, for example, certain items that represented the era of my life, I had to lovingly let it go. Because I realized that there was a emotional attachment to that. But at the same time, I also realized that the item, just served a purpose of reminding me, but what is it? Because I can let the item go, but it's still within me. So any thought that just draws me back to that era would just like, oh my God, I'll just get into a fit. But that then brought the awareness of, certain things trigger you, and there is where I need work on. And then I would then go in my own journey of like seeking help, with experts, healers, therapists to just work on those items, to unpack. You need help in unpacking these things and going through the healing cycles of things like that. So the physical item, I would say, is the most tangible and obvious cue to what can be brought up. Rather than directly addressing the trauma itself. Yeah.
So last night when we had a chat, you referred to this concept of death cleaning.
Swedish death cleaning. It's a Swedish style of version of death cleaning, and it's based on like retirement, based on the end of life, looking into, when your end of life cycle comes through, how you're going to view the items that you're going to leave behind for your loved ones, or how it would be dealt with your loved ones.
And how many people actually think of this stuff? I would say very few.
Maybe, yeah. Only when stuff happens, or a friend or relative passed on, then they get into that process. But I think for me, I guess in a very unfortunate turn of events led me to that realization. Pretty much the same time when I explored KonMari, because I lost a really good friend in 2014, end of 2014, to a car crash. And he was at that time the official photographer of my band at that time, and he had wonderful pictures. He takes a lot of pictures on like music gigs, international, regional, local DJs, bands, musicians. And what I wanted was, after that, I hoped to be able to get hold of his like hard drive or something, to be able to curate a photo memorial for him with friends. But I wasn't able to get the hard drive, or there were a lot of legal complications, basically. It's not like you can anyhow take people's stuff when when they are gone. So that kind of had the realization, and he was living alone. And I was just, hanging out with him at his place, like just a few weeks before he left. So the point is, that led me to this realization, oh yeah, anything can happen to me anytime, right? So if something's going to happen to me tomorrow, how am I going to, how are my family members going to deal with my stuff? So I think that line of question came, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a process. And it's a very hard process. And people are already grieving a loss, so it's a bit hard to then at some point deal with the things. And I've heard stories from people that I know about, when their parents pass on, and then, it takes a while for them to deal with the things, right? So I feel like then, for me, I've always used myself as a social experiment, or, like a self-inquired element of, okay, if this happens, how am I going to deal with it? So this became a inner compass, in a sense, that I think I want to be acquiring, consuming, dealing, and decluttering, and letting go of my things responsibly. And I would, at some point, already would have a memo of every category of things be planned out, charted out, to let people in my family know that these are going to be like that. Don't need to worry about this.
That's very thoughtful.
And that, I suppose, I didn't know it was called Swedish death cleaning at the time. It's only in my own research and in my own, deeper study with the decluttering realm that led me to that. I was like, oh, it is a thing. I didn't know, but it's just more of a personal tragedy thing that inspired me towards that path.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool way of looking at life and the things that you own, and how you might want to bequeath them to like the next generation or not, or give them away to charity or what have you. But I want to talk about sound healing, because that's something that you are very passionate about as well. Is there some kind of a connection between the KonMari idea of sparking joy, I know you don't like that term, and sound healing? Because both of them seem to be about resonance in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it does. But I think sound healing found its way through me a lot earlier in life, and way before decluttering came into play. Yeah. Because, but yes, in itself, KonMari method, because she, if you know her story, she was actually a shrine maiden, back in Japan, way before she became a decluttering KonMari, and she applied a lot of the principles about, even though it's not a thing that she would expand on, but the Shintoism, everything has its own meaning in its own spirit. So every time you declutter something, you're actually also just honoring something else. So I would integrate and relate that decluttering in a KonMari way is like consciously letting go of your things, right, based on certain principles. Sound healing, it's a process through different sound tools to declutter your mind. So one is kind of dealing with different parts of your life. There's the physical part, mental, emotional, spiritual part in general. So I would say that sound just really helps to be the medium into getting into people's, brain waves, into getting through to the cellular level, on that level, into just decluttering what's like considered noise, and getting into that state of stillness, that calm, that relaxation at that time, and to then get the clarity. Because both processes, when used in the context that I do, brings about a certain sense of clarity. Because when you deal and ask the questions when you're actually decluttering items, you are questioning yourself, does this spark joy? Does this make sense? Then you have to imagine yourself, like, what's life with or without that, right? But then for sound healing, when you apply that, and you kind of understanding what was the thoughts, what's the repetitive thoughts that's going on, and the sound just bypasses your analytical mind and it goes straight into that subconscious, and it just goes straight to the point. And that's why sometimes people through sound healing sessions might have aha moments, or even things that kind of surface subconsciously up, right?
Yeah.
Even like I said, traumas could also be shifted out, not to torture you, but really to just create that sense of awareness that, hey, this is happening, and the undercurrents. It's good to see what kind of thing you want to do with it, how you want to deal with it, so that you can move on with life with ease and things like that. So again, there's a clarity that can come through about what is a problem, or oh, I feel good in certain things, or what feels good for them and what is a problem for them.
I don't know if this is like an isolated experience, but I've done quite a few sound baths, and I noticed that immediately upon the conclusion of the sound bath, I feel like this kind of transition period where there's like a lot of heaviness before I then feel like light later on. Is that like a processing stage or something? Because I don't really know the science behind it. But
I love to always connect to this analogy of, when you're shaking the snow globe. So when you are in the experience of sound bath, you feel the wow, that vibration, the energy, the warmth, or even if you just go into a deep sleep.
I feel like I drift in and out of consciousness.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
And then so you're kind of in the motion, you're in the action of the impact of the sound. But once you put it down on the table, so all the snow just settles. So when you're talking about the transition, is the experience of that in between when the snow starts to settle. And then it will then later on feel like, okay, the stillness would come after. But this process of just letting everything settle, it's also when things are kind of being ruffled a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Or reorganized.
Yeah, it reorganizes itself within, because it works cellularly, energetically.
Yeah.
The heaviness is just how energy moves through you. So if there's any kind of, even you may not know it, unconscious, maybe negative energy or stress, it's just moving through you to be released.
And you just have to observe it.
Yeah.
And just not interfere and just. Yeah, not try to get rid of it, not try to add anything. Yeah. So am I right in saying that both sound healing and the KonMari method, or elements of it, have been incorporated into your own proprietary method, which you call the Align method? That's ALIGN. Okay, first and foremost, what does it stand for? How did you come up with it, and what's at the heart of it?
What's the heart of it? Okay, sure. So, sorry, what's the first one? Let's
do step by step. Yeah. So this Align method that you have embarked on or started, what does it stand for?
Okay, so A, it's for awareness, and there's a dot there. There's a reason for that, which I'll expand on that later, but it also serves as a pause. Letting go is the second one, L, and I is integrate, G is ground to grow, and N is navigate. So Align in itself is actually a word that taken from a previous brand. It's called Align Origins Holistic Wellness. I think in no matter what I do, like we talk about how the different modalities would be able to bring me to a certain point. In the end of the day, it's always a process of alignment. It's always about whether is it from yoga, sound, it's alignment of the body, aligning of the mind, aligning of the spirit into something that's true for me, right, and for others. So alignment and align is basically something that I wanted to keep the essence of, as I move to developing deeper into my work. A.Lign is also a word play on my name.
Amanda Ling.
A.Ling.
Oh, A.Ling. Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Hence,
except it's
L-I-G-N. It's like a word play. I have that dyslexic thing going on there.
Cool.
So in itself, that stands for that. And what it does, it just brings people through a journey of identifying what their clutter can be, right? And this goes from a more multifaceted way, right? From your physical, mental, emotional, career, financial, everything way, into identifying what's there, what's keeping them overwhelmed, what needs to shift, what is burning them out, what is, all of that, and the reasons for what is unbalanced in that ratio, right? Or what are they overdoing or not doing enough? So there's a lot of like deep dive into that. And that comes from the awareness phase of like, okay, there are just different guidelines in a self-inquiry framework that I have to just pull things out, right? And like, hey, this is this, this is this, this is this. Because what I find is that people are so busy in this modern world that it's very disconnected. Heart and mind disconnected, and they don't see the interconnections between this part of their life and that part of their life. And people are great with compartmentalizing everything. They can be great at work, but then having issues at home. I mean, it's normal. We're human. We go through stuff. But if there is a way that you can start to become and realign to become more balanced into a better version, why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's awareness, and there are different modalities. So besides sound and decluttering, there are other heart-based strategies with like meditative breath works, creative expression. It really isn't, there is a structure, but yet it's not rigid. So it kind of comes back into my own version of, there's a bit of a free flow of what kind of modalities I would assign to that phase, because it's a 5-phase. So if that person is not so into yoga or anything, then I wouldn't recommend like a yoga posture for a practice, right? But maybe whatever, if you run, if you're doing gym, applying that certain awareness on what they're feeling out of it through a guided question.
Yeah.
That itself, any somatic practice would be able to get into that state of awareness. It's also targeting, what is already within their lifestyle and how do you kind of like enhance it and bring it all together. Letting go, I think it's the second phase is actually one of the tougher phase, I would say, because letting go would mean about understanding first. You need to have awareness of what's wrong, what's going on, where they want to be, right? So then we have to then deep dive into what's kind of the block there from keeping you from going from point A to point B. If this is where you want to be, then we need to think about, these are the little blockages or big blockages, are you ready to let go, right? So letting go can be the process of the physical decluttering, or like a sound healing tool, or even a energetic elements of like healing modalities, or releasing statements, right? Or just affirmation stuff. Because words are energies, and using the words from a heart-centered space is very profound. And you're tapping and combining your logic and your intuition together into making a meaningful change.
Yeah.
So people have to be committed in the process too. So with letting go process, there are these, it's always a longer phase, I would say, about being able to feel ready and willing to do the work. This is where the real deal comes in. It's no nonsense. It's like, this is stuff that needs to get through.
Yeah.
So are you ready? Are you able to? And then integrate. It comes with about, after letting go, surrendering, you need time. You need time to feel, like you said, you just feel that heaviness that comes through after the session. You just have to be, let it be. So that is that version of letting it be. Integrating what came through, your learnings, your realizations and things like that, and just let it soak there for
simmer.
a while. Yeah, because I feel that this is a phase most people will sometimes skip. They just want to skip the harder part.
They want the results.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's a results-driven society, right? So
that's true.
Everyone's always gravitating towards like, what's the ROI on this?
Look at where we are now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, this is how it has been working, and da. But the thing is, where are we now? What's the state of the world? How can we actually just start meaningful change? And maybe that's not really serving us too well. It did for a time, but it's not sustainable. So what is considered sustainable? You need time, you need spaces, you need that time to just like do nothing. I think doing nothing is probably the greatest challenge of the of human beings now.
I 100% agree
without
with you.
Guilt, So that gives that part integration, a lot of practices on just different ways to just get people into what integration means for them. And in this phase, this element of silence come into play a lot. Yeah, so it's a lot of coaching in that sense, about, okay, what it is and how does it look like, right? So how can silence look like on a daily life? It could just be in the morning, you just have silence. You don't immediately turn off your phone. I mean, these are different, like, productivity hacks or things that we kind of been already exposed and cultivating, but it's just really coming into that integratedness and that real life application and like consistency, right? With that comes in, and that is also the phase where it goes into ground to grow. So ground to grow is basically where now that you have already done the very hard work of letting go all the stuff, right? In all sense. Of course, it takes practice, and it might take a few rounds of this, but at least the initial big chunk. Then you identify what is a new direction, what are the value system, because there are certain intrinsic core values that we always hold, but certain values might shift over time in our entire life based on the phase that we're in. Your needs and values when you're 20s, 30s, and 40s or 50s shift, or once you start having a family or different things that's happening. You have to constantly review where your values on this and what's the priority on that. So this is kind of like that setting part where what is the thing that you want to drill in and plant a seed to grow, and then you're able to expand on how can you attract the right things or the more joyful, positive actions that you can take from that. And then from that, after ground to go, there's another small integration as well in terms of, okay, from now, it takes time for people to, I would say, like anchor on in the practice, because, you talk about 21 days to form a habit or things like that, but sometimes people just fall off the wagon. Knowing their whys from their values will always be that drawing board and that north, that the true north for them to come back to when they kind of get distracted by the world or they just fall off the wagon. And when it comes to N, it's about navigation. It's about, I think people just try something and then it doesn't work and then they just give up altogether. But then what is that comeback plan? How do you navigate when life from situation A became situation B? Like, something just get put out of you and you're faced with new situations. And that's also true my own journey. Like, I've always been very slow to deal with changes, but at the same time, in different things, I'm quick to adapt. So there's this element of like, on what grounds do you, deal with situations and navigate it in a way that you're not going to fall into negative, toxic habits, right? So there's always the navigation areas where you chart out a plan, to kind of like, okay, if this comes out, when this happens, what can, from everything that you have from the previous 4 phases, be able to apply? Because in between, there are different strategies that would be implemented. And sometimes it just takes that 1 or 2 strong one that resonate with them to keep them in that centered space and to be able to deal with things with clarity, calm, and composure. Yeah, I think that is where my direction of aligned method is. It's a very heart-centered framework based on my experiences, and I have never set out to do something like that in that sense. It's more like, it came to a point where how can I make these different modalities make sense in a way that's integrated? I have had my experiences deep diving into each of that and my own experiences out of that to create this. And more importantly, it's really about shifting, right? It's about people. Things are constantly shifting right now in like ways beyond our understanding. And I think people need to be ready and prepped to be able to shift gears when needed, especially with the whole AI thing going on, with people's, way and the frame of working and living becomes hijacked by these external elements that you thought that you can once just grow old with your pension with this kind of job and things like that. But it's shifting for a lot. And I think people, when the uninitiated, not aware of how they can properly like manage that, they lose it, right? Emotionally, mentally. And it's just sad in the whole entire world now, the state of everyone's mental health. So if there's a strategy that you can kind of help people with just having that healthy buoyancy of a boat, right, to fall back on. And I feel that it's really about empowering people to be able to learn the strategy so that any emergency, they can just pull it out.
Yeah.
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 It's like a survival skill.
Yeah. So is this aligned method live right now? I.e., are you actually coaching people?
So it has really long time coming to come through it. It's not exactly live, but what I'm doing is going to be, I wrote a book about it first in terms of all my lived experiences, stories, philosophies, principles about it, and guiding people, like say each phase of it would have a very practical solution or a practical prompt for them to apply it to whatever areas of their life. It's a whole learning journey about shifting myself as a practitioner from a very service-oriented work for hire, right? Like say I work with like Venue ABC, collaborate with this to facilitate this into, I would say a mentor at this point, that like an online mentor that people can work with me online anytime. Well, not anytime, but more like globally as well. Yeah, because it's everything on Zoom. So I'm restructuring. I have been going in a very cocoon mode in the past years to just really kind of think about what is it, where I want to go, and with everything that I want to do and how I'm going to present it. So it has taken a long time, and rightfully so, to, it's just like wine maturing, whiskey maturing. I really felt that was the process.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rush it. So, but yes, I mean, in time to come, definitely 2026 onwards, it will be available for people.
Very nice. I guess you can't really answer this question because it's not officially something that you're doing yet, the aligned method that is. But how long would you say this whole process would take for like a potential client to complete?
Right.
Because there's so much to unpack.
I understand.
Right, at each stage of the journey. Are we talking a year and a half to actually see tangible results or benefits in one's life?
I would say at minimum 6 months to 1 year. Yeah. And so I suppose I have also thought through the process for people to actually have accessibility to the different tiers, right, of how committed you are. Put it that way. Because it's not something for, it's not something for the faint-hearted if you're not ready, or, if it's, because a lot of times I hear a lot of people coming to me through my workshops in the past, at least, that I know I need to do this, right? But, at the moment I think about it, opening a door, I am so anxious. So I find that people have so much emotional blockages dealing with a physical situation in their home. And that is also a clue into how they're dealing with other things in their life that's more intangible. So it takes time to unpack all of these. But again, I understand it's a very intimate process, working together, and I may not be for everyone and everyone may not be for me. So it's really it's for the people who resonate. Yeah. But usually so the first entry point is the book, because the book is gonna be really under $5 on Amazon at the time would be. And maybe a couple of printed books. But within the book would already give certain, understanding through my stories and through the different cue point, the prompts, to be able to have, okay, you read this phase 1, what's that 1 or 2 things you can do, right? And just journal down. So from a very journaling perspective and the action of it. So those that do not want to deal with me and just want to also experience the method on their own and try it out, and that's the option for them. Just go through the different chapters of it. Yeah. But then those that just want one step further, they have a one-off session with me, like a one-off strategy one-on-one mentorship, right? That I will take them through the first phase, awareness, and it's more like an hour call of just, okay, this is what's going on, right? So we'll map out what's going on, where you are at, what's ready to shift, and the different strategies, how to tackle the inner and outer environment that's, that one issue for that day, and then certain guidelines and prompts for them to work on. then I'll be actually giving them like a guidebook after that, like a PDF for
Yeah.
them to just, a summary of everything and everything like a blueprint for them to just start working on.
Yeah.
So it becomes a jumpstart journey package for them to start. And it can take time because people might, after the call, maybe just 1 month later, deal with it.
Yeah.
But at least there's some clarity on a starting point
Yeah.
about what needs to shift, where, how, when are they going to be committing to a schedule to that. And then those that want to go even deeper would have a option of a 6 months or 12 months. So then obviously in the 6-12 months, then there will be more perks and, in being more my own access and also being able to work deeper into what they tackle one phase each time and different areas of their life. And then there's always a lot of follow-ups in between. So I think it really is, that's where I feel the tangible changes can happen when you give that time. When you give the space, there's absolutely no need to rush any process at all. Silence. Like, do something and you just chill for that. Don't do anything for that few days and then you see how you feel.
Yeah.
Right? There's always this almost like a unconscious expectation that you need to be doing a lot of things to be able to, even in the context of healing, that to be able to feel that you have successfully healed. But actually,
it's an ongoing process, right?
Yeah, as a process.
And it's non-linear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
I suspect that to be able to guide people through their emotional and physical stressors, that you'd have to be pretty put together yourself.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, do you have any non-negotiables that you stand by in terms of like practices or habits that you do daily to stay grounded or aligned? Like, what's a day in the life of Amanda Ling right now?
Oh, my own spiritual practice is the non-negotiable.
Yeah,
right?
which
From
is
meditation to prayers to just being clear in my mind, being able to move, being able to eat well, being able to rest well and sleep early. I think these are all very basic stuff, but it really does impact your state of mind.
Yeah.
So to be able to be in that mode to hold the space for people, I actually need like a few hours of preparation, So in a way that I would plan my meetings, calls with very spaced out areas, because I have learned from many lessons in life not to overpack my schedules and leave time for priming and like debriefing with myself.
If you don't mind me asking, what kind of meditation prayers do you do?
I mean, it's really a broad thing because I would also sometimes use my sound. I would use voice. I would be toning a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, toning and in sacred languages and mantras, that to me at this point is my current practice. And, sound or just playing like sound healing music throughout my home with mantras and things like that. It just helps to like create that space and energize the space. Yeah. And I would just be able to feel a lot better because sometimes I may be going through a bad day and many a times I have to hold space for classes in the past, right?
Yeah.
So being able to be embodying in the practice that you are teaching and preaching, then you just get into that sync mode. Yeah, like I just do a couple of downward dogs and breathe and planks. And even that, if that moves me forward, that to just release pent up energy.
Yeah.
I've been a recently certified heart math trainer, so it's really a lot of heart-brain coherence techniques to be able to get you into the heart space. To be.
It
able
sounds
to
like
make
Joe
decisions.
Dispenza. Have you read his book?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So Heart Methods in itself, an entity and an institute of research in the US that they have a lot of, it's all science-backed about how does the brain and the heart connect with each other, right? And you need to be able to like be in high-pressure environments. How are you able to remain composed? And it's really through very simple heart elements of breath work.
Yeah. Sorry, I was a bit vague there. I meant, have you read his books? Because he's written quite a few. I think the one that I read was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah. I was reading it halfway.
Yeah. So I know a little bit about the whole brain-heart coherence thing. But yeah, to your point, the Align method isn't live right now. But if someone listening wants to hear some practical wisdom from you in that, if they're feeling stuck right now, what is like where's the first place that you would tell them to start?
My website is live at least.
Yeah.
Yes. So soundtoground.com. You're able to read a couple of my blogs about my own journey, my own decluttering journey, things that I've done, and the certain practical stuff. So a lot of it for me is about, as much as all of these are happening, what are the things that I have felt that I have applied that gave me success in moving out of a rut into somewhere more empowered. And I think because of my lived experiences that I'm able to then share it a lot more, with deeper context with people through the book. But as of now, in fact, I think the newer version of my web would be ready in a week or two. So by then, they might be kind of being able to get into the vibe of how everything is, and also have like articles and things like that to be available there.
Very cool. If you were to go back to your younger self, what would you tell her now?
Wow, okay.
Silence is golden.
Own your energy and do not care about what people think or say.
Is this in relation to like articles that were written about you, perhaps?
I think it's not just articles written about me. I think it's about, yes and no, but I think it's even more casual context with being affected by what people think of me in general. I think that's like the baseline, especially back in the day, there wasn't social media per se, and a lot of people's opinions were being projected out on forums or blog spots at that time. And I think the curious mind, when you Google your own name at that point, it becomes a very depressing element. It can be both good projections and bad projections, but I've seen some that are like outright sexual harassment, especially on adult forums. So I think that became a PTSD element, and I think it's just kind of, just spiraled into another thing altogether, and not having the right way to deal with it, or to know that it is not my problem. I think one really big lesson is no matter what people think of you, it's not my business. It's not my problem. It's not my business. It's really more on who they are and what they think, rather than me for being who I am in my own true way that I express myself.
Very powerful. And I guess just in a nutshell, this game that we call life is obviously a very constantly evolving journey. But would you say right now in this moment that you are content with the life that you're leading?
Yes, 100% content.
Is there room for you to be happier? Or is that...
Of course. Yes, of course. There's always, right, in a way.
Yeah.
But I think that came from a very hard space of lessons, because of meeting, needing to struggle between meeting people's expectations in the past and what is okay for me and what's content. What does even contentment be? Because it looks different in how I see it and how you might see it. But I think contentment for me comes from every day waking up and knowing that I am taking all my actions are aligned to my values, that it's taking me to where I want to be. And is my action today going to improve and in the direction of how I want to be, right? And it comes down to how I want to be. It comes from a question of how can I use my gifts, talents, skills to serve humanity? I think it's just a very baseline question I ask myself all the time. So if there's any opportunity that comes through or any situations and I'm like, does this align to that goal of serving humanity? In the context of being in the past, in the heavier entertainment industry, it can be very self-serving. You can get lost into the whole thing and, be conditioned to think that way. But once you just pull that stuff out, and I would say even within the wellness industry, this whole thing about battling, we're all human beings, there's ego and, what is a balance between ego and also not being able to give your power away. Because it can be two sides of the extreme. But how can you be discerning about you need to stand your own ground, but at the same time, how can you still compassionately, empathetically serve through the gifts and through you? Yeah.
All right. What a profound way to finish things off.
Thank
Listen,
you.
I love your story, and I'm super grateful to have had this chance to
Thank you.
share this space with you. Thank you for sharing so openly. And I think we're going to have to do a second parter at some point
Yes,
down
for
the
sure,
line.
for sure. I'm always happy to do so.
Yeah, I would be happy to indulge. But honestly, I wish you all the best
Thank you.
in your
Thank
future
you.
endeavors.
You too. You too.
Yeah, thanks.